These are the 5 mistakes I was making with my nutrition back when I was a fat bastard first trying to lose body fat. Back when I was 17 years old, that was my first sort of time trying to lose weight and trying to lose body fat and actually take care of myself. Now, back when I was 17 years old, my self-confidence was at an all-time low and I was really wanting to do something to change that. And the first thing that I wanted to do was lose a heap of body fat. Having been an incredibly overweight kid, teenager, it got to the point where I knew that if I could at least lose some weight, then I was going to feel a little bit better about myself, and also on top of that, like, improve my health and fitness. Now, because I had basically grown up on microwave ready meals, majority of my entire family and people around me were all overweight, didn't know anything about nutrition. It was all through trial and error. I was kind of just learning as I went, making mistakes and learning from them. And the reason why I'm kind of going over these 5 mistakes is because I see them very commonly still being done by the majority of people trying to lose body fat. And I guess just help you not fuck up as often as I did when I was first starting out. So mistake number 1 is overeating protein. Now, I think this one is probably more relevant to men than it is to women, because women are notorious for under-eating with protein, whereas men, in a lot of cases, are the complete opposite. The mistake that I was making was thinking that, like, the more protein, the better. And I made pretty much all of my meals just very, very heavy protein. And back then, I was 17 years old. I was about 90 kilos, had 0 muscle mass. I was just fat. And I was eating somewhere in the region of 250 to 300 grams of protein every single day, which, number 1, is expensive. And my part-time job cleaning dishes in a hotel just was struggling to make ends meet and pay the food bill getting all that protein in. But it was completely unnecessary for what my goals were, where my current physique was at, the amount of muscle mass that I had. And I think for a lot of men, this is a mistake that they're making, where they think the more protein, the better. And like, as I said, yeah, number 1, you will save some money financially. And number 2, like, you can put the calories that you're saving from that extra protein towards things like carbs, which are just going to help with performance in whatever kind of sport or exercise that you are doing. So, like, a good sort of rule of thumb, I think, for the majority of people anyway, like, there's a lot of different guidelines and calculations to try and figure out your protein. I honestly think for the average person who's just trying to build a bit of muscle, lose a bit of body fat, and just look after their health, 1.6 grams times by your body weight in kilos is going to give you a healthy amount of protein to be eating that's not just redundant, but also not just undercutting it as well at the same time. Mistake number 2 that I made was not eating enough fiber. And it wasn't really a case of I was never a fan of fruit and veg. I've always been a big fan of it. It was just more so me getting trapped into this, like, almost bodybuilder mindset of, like, it's like protein and carbs and that's all I've got to eat. So I never really added much color to my meals, and I very quickly found that just general things like mood, energy levels, sleep, general health and well-being wasn't as great as it could have been. Like, there are other factors at play that could be contributing towards that, but I definitely felt like because I wasn't prioritizing getting the fiber in, I was then therefore not getting enough fruit and veg in, therefore I wasn't getting enough micronutrition in as well, which is going to equate to just better health and well-being. So if I could go back and correct that mistake, what I'd be doing is having, at least at the bare minimum, a source of fruit or veg in every single meal. What I'm doing now is I'm having, in majority of my meals, both. Okay, unless it's like a meal that's Greek yogurt or whey and oats, I'm not putting veg in there because I'm not a psycho. But I'll put fruit in there, and then I'll have things like chicken and rice or mince and pasta, mince and potatoes, whatever, and I'll put veg in that, plus I'll have fruit on the side. So I think for a nice healthy amount is going to help with, like, we're all adults here and we all can appreciate a nice healthy trip to the toilet. Frequent bowel movements, obviously optimal, like, digestion, and just sort of absorption rate of carbohydrates as well. A nice sort of number for women to aim for in terms of fibers, anywhere between 20 and 30 grams. And then for men, you're a little bit higher, 30 and 40. I think when you start getting of an older age and you start getting about 50 plus, like, maybe cut that down just a little bit by like somewhere between 5 and 10 grams. Just because you can start to have the opposite effect when it comes to digestion. But yeah, like, if you're eating a nice wholesome amount of carbohydrates, and you're not just getting it from like Haribos and Cocoa Pops. Like, you'll be getting a decent chunk of fiber through things like rice, pasta, any kind of bread, sourdough bread, that kind of thing. But then also just adding plenty of fruit, plenty of veg. Make that a priority. I think protein and fiber are like the two most important things to base your nutrition around, not just for like building muscle and body composition in general, but also for health and well-being. Mistake number 3 that I made, and this is probably why I lacked progress, or my progress was a lot slower than I wanted to be, and this is something that I see 9 out of 10 people still doing to this day when it comes to first trying to lose body fat, and that's not accounting for everything. Basically, not tracking all of my calories. And this wasn't out of like me being naive or just kind of neglecting actually tracking it or a lack of accountability or whatever. It was just, I didn't know any better at the time. Like, I remember I was using extra virgin olive oil to cook one of my meals. I was using like a pretty heavy pasta sauce for one of my meals. I was making my protein shakes with milk. I was making my oats meal with milk. So I was having healthy meals, but it was the added ons, the milk, the oils, the sauces. I was never really one for wanky Starbucks coffees or anything like that, but even shit like full fat drinks, if I was having like a Lucozade or a Monster or something, I didn't know any better at the time. I just kind of assumed, food has got calories and then kind of everything else is just like fair game. That's just obviously not how it works. And it wasn't until I was making one of my mince and pasta meals and I was putting like the jar of sauce in it, and I was like, I wonder what the calories are like. And I looked at it and went, half a jar has got 200 calories. Of course it does, because why the fuck wouldn't it? And it was at that point the penny kind of dropped. I was like, right, anything that is going down my gob, anything that I'm consuming is being accounted for and is being tracked. And I would even track black coffees. I would track sugar-free drinks. The only thing that I literally wouldn't track is just plain water. I would track sugar-free flavored water though, just to get in the habit. And I very much quickly realized, I was like, okay, there are certain things that don't need to be tracked because they literally are 0 calorie, but even like veg, there's a strong argument to be made that some green veg doesn't need to be tracked because the amount of energy that's required to basically digest it, process it, absorb it, blah, 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 use the energy that's in that green veg, you basically burn anyway, so it just becomes neutral, let's just say. However, I think it's just a good habit to get into, even if you are using like broccoli or asparagus, whatever, simply just track it, because 1, you just don't know, and 2, it's just a fucking habit. So if you think you're being consistent with your diet and you're frustrated with the lack of progress that you're making on the scales or with your body composition, and you just feel like you're not fucking going anywhere, start tracking absolutely fucking everything. Even if you think it doesn't need tracked, track it. And I think another added benefit, and this is probably the most important one actually, is you will start to quickly learn or have more knowledge and understanding and awareness of around nutrition, how many calories are in certain foods, how much protein is in certain foods, etc., etc., etc. The amount of clients that I've worked with where they've started tracking like these high protein snacks and then quickly realized, they're high in calories, but there's fuck all protein, so they're not actually high protein, they're just labeled as that. So they start opting for things that aren't like processed snacks that are labeled high protein. And I think, a strong benefit there is just the fact that you gain more knowledge around nutrition. So track absolutely everything. Mistake number 3 that I made was trying to eat something different every day to just try and make it interesting. Doing if it fits your macros rather than like following a meal plan. It's just trying to reinvent the wheel and try and eat something different day because they get bored of this eating the same thing, which grow up, in my opinion. You're going to give yourself decision fatigue. If you're having to track something different every single day and having to take the time to do that every single day, you're going to burn yourself out. You're either going to get bored of the whole process, you're going to get frustrated with the whole process, things are maybe going to fall through the cracks and go under the radar, or you're simply just going to go, fuck this, fuck it all off, and then just not track anything intentionally. So I think the more consistent you can keep the foods that you eat, the better. And that doesn't necessarily mean have the exact same meals cooked in the exact same way every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, okay? What that means is that I would keep your protein sources the same, but maybe change out the carbs or the fruit and the veg and the way that you actually cook the food. And the argument that I always make is, if you think about your favorite cuisines, Chinese, Indian, Mediterranean, Italian, Thai, etc., etc., etc. Like the majority of these cuisines, right, are just meat and carbs cooked in slightly different ways with different seasonings and slightly different sauces, all right? And a lot of them are just chicken and rice cooked differently. And this is the point that I'm trying to make, is you can take the same meal and just change it up ever so slightly to make it slightly more interesting. And I went through a period of doing this as well once I kind of learned a little bit more about nutrition and how to meal prep more efficiently. And I think once I got into a good rhythm and flow of just eating exactly the same thing every single day, and I was making the most amount of progress that way, I was like, oh, I might try changing things up a little bit differently. I might try changing the way I cook food and adding different seasons, adding different sauces. And it's not that my progress stalled or stopped. It just, the whole meal prep process just took longer and it became more frustrating. And I was like, I am quite content eating the same thing every day if it means I'm going to see the results that I want to see. And I'm a big eater. I fucking love my food. If you are someone who's saying that you can't eat the same thing every day, I think it's just because you've had too much exposure to having 12 different flavors in one meal. So strip it all back for a start. I can guarantee the more consistency you have with the foods that you eat on a day-to-day basis, the more consistency you will see progress. And the fifth and final mistake that I made as a teenager trying to lose weight for the very first time was thinking that balance was the answer to long-term success. Balance is thrown about more often than not in the fitness industry, and it's become one of my pet peeves because, number one, I think everyone's perception of what balance is fucked. Balance to a lot of people is being on their diet, maybe Monday through till Friday, and then being a fat, gluttonous bastard over the weekend, pulling them right out of a deficit and not seeing progress. Balance for some people is going and doing a workout and then getting McDonald's on the way home. Balance for some people is having a salad for lunch and then a fucking Domino's takeaway for dinner. Balance isn't just an excuse to be 50-50. Balance means that we need to come to some kind of agreement where about maybe 90% of the time you are on it, and then that 10% of the time there's a little bit more relaxation. But within that 10%, the reason why this is a bit of an iffy one is because when you are not on it, that's not an excuse to go absolutely fucking AWOL. And the mistake that I made was basically thinking that, right, I can be like, let's say I'm having 5 meals a day, 4 of my meals are clean bodybuilding meals, and then that 5th meal is just like shit, like a pizza that I've maybe picked up from the supermarket on my way home, or a Rustler's burger, whatever shit it might be. The reality with that is that, like, depending on what it is, if you're doing it on a day-to-day basis or if you're doing it at the weekend, and more often than not, it's enough to pull you out of the deficit. And if we think about, for example, like a modest deficit for most people is about 300 calories. Okay, so if you were to follow that 7 days of the week, that's 2,100 calories by the end of the week. Now, let's just say one of the days you have a large Domino's pizza. I don't think that's too out of the question here. I'm not too familiar with the calories of Domino's pizza. I think most of them are somewhere between like 2 to 2,500 calories. That is you just ruined. That's you just pulled yourself out of a deficit for the entire week because you've had one Domino's pizza. So even though like 6 out of 7 days were absolutely spot on, that 7th day, it wasn't even the 7th day, it was one meal on the 7th day, has been enough to ruin the deficit for the week. So balance really isn't the answer for most people because their perception of balance is fucked. So firstly, maybe change what your perception of balance is actually like. Secondly, maybe understand that it's not the answer to long-term success here. And I think a better course of action would be right. Okay, so an approach that I will take with a lot of clients that kind of maybe feel like they need that food flexibility or they need like just a few drinks at the weekend or whatever is taking the current lifestyle and just making it better. So the foods that you're maybe currently eating and then turning them into something that's a healthier variation or option, or reducing the amount of alcohol consumption or changing the type of alcohol that's being consumed. Rather than having 3 takeaways a week, we're going to limit it to 1. So it's not perfect, but it's better and it's going in the right direction and it's making those small improvements over time. And this is something that I did with myself was what I was basically doing was, yeah, having that shit meal in the evening after a day of like perfect eating, and quickly realized I was like, wow, the weight's still not coming down. I was like, okay, how these shit meals that I'm having in the evening, how can I make them better? So as I said, like I would maybe pick up a Rustler's burger. Cool. Why don't I make a homemade burger with like, I've got mince in the fridge. I'll use bagel thins, gherkins, a little bit of like low reduced sugar and salt ketchup. Like that's the same thing for me. Okay. If anything, it's actually better. If I wanted, like there was a burrito place around the corner for me, I can make that myself. So it's just, rather than getting like takeaway food, I'm making a healthier option and variation for myself. So it's rather than just thinking I can have this being perfect and being utterly shit kind of approach and then getting frustrated with the lack of progress I'm making, it's more just a case of like trying to blend the two to still have some level of like enjoyment or being social. Yeah, just basically taking something that's shit and making it less shit, whether that is reducing the amount, reducing the frequency, or changing it to a slightly healthier option. Yeah, those are definitely the 5 mistakes I first made when I was first trying to lose body fat and lose weight. And honestly, it held me back for a long time. And it's trial and error. I feel like I'm saying it now thinking it sounds very basic and it sounds like it's probably general knowledge, but I work with dozens of different people every single few months. And it's always the same sort of thing when they first come in and they're like, oh, I didn't realize, or I didn't know. And it's like, I understand it because I've been there and I get it. And so I always have like a little bit of an assessment period when I first start working with someone, because I want to take where their lifestyle is currently at and just slightly improve it. So it doesn't feel like it's so overwhelming or like they're a sinking ship and they just fuck it all off because of how frustrating it is. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you're looking for more free, useful tips, tricks, bits of advice, nutritional guidance, training guidance, etc., etc. I'll pop the link for my email list in the description for this video where you can join that for free, and I'll catch you in the next video.